We're up to the Federalists, and they drew their cards. Now, they have a lot of crises that they really want. They also have this federal government supports separatism, which improves the Francophone unit. That's not useful to them, particularly unless they have the Francophone unit. So, elections in Quebec, well, not terribly valuable to them. They're still holding off on those. But these others, the crises, how many can they take advantage of? They'd like to not take too many of them. Again, they don't want to look too much like the leader. They're already in a dangerous position here. They've got 13 constituents. If you hit 20, you haven't won the game. You can't change the rules. Although there's, if there's any ambiguities, you can change those. And how much an ambiguity, what constitutes an ambiguity and what doesn't is kind of painful. Like I said, most of the rules are pretty clean cut though, so it's not a real problem there. But what you can do is once each of your turns, you get to call an issue in for free into the crisis zone, and you can block any issue you don't want called. So if you have something, you can just prevent it from happening. That takes a lot of power out of other people's hands. They have to assault you directly in your home to take anything from you, basically. And that, as we've seen, is tough, no matter how you cut it. Okay, so how many do I think I can take? I can certainly take 2. I can probably take more than that. And there aren't a lot of opportunities available. So I'm going to call these up one at a time. Now, the question then becomes, well, if I do call them up, do other people want to prevent me from activating my crises? I don't feel like the vote is close enough, that the power is close enough. How many points do you need to win? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 issues. Now, they don't know that 3 of my issues are ones I don't care about, but they know that one of them is. So I'm not really that close to winning the game. They're not in the position where they have to play defense. One of the problems with this game is that it can go on forever, essentially, because there is this balance of power ability. Once someone looks like they're doing really well, getting close to that 20 votes or whatever, you can just slam them for everything. You can hit their ability to call crises, or if they're getting close on the issues, you can hit their ability to get crises. You can hit their you can consistently call up one of their issues into the crisis zone and just demolish their position. And that's a situation that really I feel is the more powerful position than trying to call a national emergency. The national emergency honestly just doesn't work. So actually, I'm not sure if I've ever finished a game of this solo. I'll play for a while, but no guarantees there. The only times I've finished it is when I played opposed, and people didn't realize so much how they could use the game to prevent anyone from winning. Played the Tariff Crisis, or Red played the Tariff Crisis, and Orange tried to convince people, hey, let's stop it. Green also had a tariff, also under a questionable place, where it's controlled by the control spot and not by the piece. That's the case here too. Green was unwilling to do the, let's gang up on him now. Green isn't interested in the tariff, and pulling out the stops on the game at this point feels painful. It's hard to justify, is basically how I'm looking at it. So anyway, that deal didn't go through, and as part of the payoff for the deal not going through, Red's going to call the more desirable, because they can win this civil servant into the crisis zone. Now this becomes no longer an Orange issue for sure. They don't control it at all. Now Red can go with another action, and I think they will. They chose not to. They would like to attack this, but they're not allowed to because it's not stacked with an issue. They would like to get their civil servant back, but they're going to have a shot at this one. I've got a 3-1 easily there. The problem is I couldn't get another good odds attack on that space because 3 points is a fairly large set. Now, I have to actually decide what I'm going to put in, and I want to use my guys who can't be converted, the politicians. 4, 5, 6, 7. I need 2 more. I'll throw the finance minister in as well. He can be converted. Now that means that the piece can only go under one of these constituencies, but that's okay. I could actually throw this constituency in instead of this one without throwing the wood in there. There's no chance of a failure, so it's okay. I'm safe no matter what. Well, there's a chance of this kind of failure, which is the I didn't get it. I don't want to run the elections, so I push things on to the orange player. Okay, so with red's failure to grab that tariff, orange is up next. They pulled their cards. Got kind of a tough job. They've got to attack to take the tariff. They do have a card that'll help them attack it. They're going to have the tariff. They don't have any crises except language, but I'm looking and, geez, I still have that tariff marked here. I looked through my pieces and that's not there. I forgot to remove it. I'm not sure if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They should be at 6 issues, which is correct. Whether or not I want to use this card to make that attack, I'm not sure yet. The other card I have is the national elections. With the number of constituencies that I have, I'm not in the lead, which means I'm not going to be able to make the government. I've got no reason to believe that I can come to some agreement with the Federalists here, so I'm probably going to just hold on to this until some time when I'm in the power seat to call for elections, which is generally the case in this game. Unless you've got a really strong reason to believe that you can work together with the person who is in the power seat, you don't play that card. And right now we've got some problems that we need to deal with, and I don't see getting more civil servants than I currently have, basically. What about a crisis in language? Well, I have one language somewhere over here. I have this tax. There should be 2 of those. Let me make sure I have the numbers right here. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 total. So that looks right. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to play any of these. I don't have an agreement in hand that's going to allow me to call additional issues up. So I'll just start running. 1, 2. Now here's the question. I've only got 3 movement points. I could get to here, but then I could be surrounded by green. At least here, it's a little tougher to get to me. If I was here, though, I could throw the hydroelectric companies into play as a lobbying power. That would give me up to 4 defensive points. The real question is, does green care about this tax issue? And I'll look at my sheet and see, they want 2 tax. They're going to go for it, and they're going to go pretty big. So whatever I throw in there, unless it's something I can't lose, like a premier, which I can't get into range, I'm probably going to lose it. I don't want to risk more than I have. In fact, what I'd kind of like to do is give this issue up to green. But why would green allow that? Why would anybody let me bail that issue? And there's no guarantee that I wouldn't lose the constituent anyhow. So that's kind of the issue there. Other things moving, well, I want to get this language issue into my hands a little deeper because that is important to me. And I want to set up for the target. I succeed in those tasks. My elections, Alberta. See, here's the problem. Do I want to call an election in Alberta? Well, I got to hunt down all the Alberta characters. There's one here. Originally, orange, green, and blue each had one. We gotta look everywhere to see if we can find them. I got one. And does blue have one? Conceivably, I could lose Alberta. But I could also conceivably gain... there's the other one. All right, I'm going to go for the Alberta election. I think overall, this is about as good as it gets if I'm going to have someone. So I roll for my own. Well, if I'm going to do that, maybe I should have moved. Let's see if I can find him. Moved him. I can't really get him too deep into my territory. We'll give some protection to this New Brunswick piece. Okay, so I've got a 1 in my advantage for being in the administrative section, I think. -1. I've got 6 issues, so I'm safe. Now over here, green, we've got one in the crisis zone, which is at +1. Oh, I've not taken care of that damn thing. 5, that's going to shift 1 towards red, so I'll be getting that one. And the bookkeeping in this game is a pain in the ass. And now, I can take him off the board. We got one there at -1. 5, that's going to go 1. That also goes red. Okay. So, I've gained 2 constituencies from green. That's powerful. I'm going to get the premier, whom I will place with my most at-risk constituency out here. I guess that indicates that he's more in that direction. I'm not sure until he moves over to join the rest of his body. And I got to take care of the issue as well, which could have affected the elections, but the number is 6 to 10 where that shifts. But what did I gain there? I don't remember. It was the tariff I just erased here, and that should put me back up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 issues. And yes, I'm really taking my time with this one because that doesn't help either, because it makes it easier to forget everything. Pull some cards for green. One of the problems I have is this inability or lack of desire to make deals for me. Now, I start looking at it and think, well, I'll wait until I'm close. Once you're close to victory, the only way you can make a deal is if you're both going to win. It's kind of like a cosmic encounter type of deal at that point. The question is, can you get yourself close to victory through deals? And because somebody's not going to hand you something. And in fact, it's actually probably impossible to have a dual win that way by 2 people having, first of all, enough issues between them that they can both win. But also, just because of the mechanisms of how you capture issues, you don't just drop them off on a control point or on a user, which may be why the rule is so arcane in the way that it's formulated. Instead, let's say green wants to cut a deal. They're sitting here, they've got media and tariff that they do not need. And blue happens to be interested in media and has foreign affairs that green could use. This would be the optimal time to try to work out a deal, because green's far enough behind that they're not in danger of winning. You have to get to 10 issues, I believe, is what each person has, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think everybody needs 10. So it's clear that he's not going to win off that deal. On the other hand, blue is far enough behind that he kind of doesn't give a shit. So now green is thinking, okay, can I make a deal with somebody who's in my league? Because obviously blue isn't willing to make that deal unless I do something else for them. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. With me walking away and not playing much, it's very hard to come to those deals, even harder than usual. And usually I'm just focusing on, well, what can I get done this turn? What can I get done this turn? Real problem with playing this game. It wasn't worth cutting a deal for green anyway. They had too much effort in trying to capture this Ontario constituent running with an issue they're interested in. They're actually really low on pieces at this point. And it's getting to be an ugly situation for green. They just do not have the kind of force to cover what they wish to do. They were able to get a lot of pieces in there, but they weren't able to get anything into a position to even attack, to try to get one of these into play that they could use. Oh, I missed this guy. He's got to get out of there. He doesn't have anywhere good to go either. He's pretty much doomed. That's finance and banking, which blue is interested in, as well as this green. Green has an extra of that. Green could have certainly given that up, but again, like with the orange position, he would have lost. He would probably lose the constituency anyway. It would still come under attack. Takes their turn and picks off the only easy thing they had to take, the Ontario constituency, along with the issue. They care about the issue. It was the finance and banking they need. I'm sorry. I'm less attached probably to what's going on than those of you who are watching this, in the sense that I'm playing like, maybe a full turn a day at most. This is not a long game, but I'm just distracted by other things severely. Anyway, we're in this kind of weird situation where it's hard to make this move towards something to do. So, for example, blue has an interest in trying to cut some sort of deal, but they don't really want to cut a deal with green, because one of the natural things in this game is the people who are closest to you politically are the people that you're probably targeting, because you're more likely to gather their, to win fights against them and actually shift things into your own color area. You're more likely to play elections that might lose them something, because then you might gain something. So the natural alliance actually tends to be far away, at least 2 spaces away, like orange-blue. But probably the red-blue alliance is the most likely to ever happen in the game, just by the nature of the game, which is very, very weird to me. It's the political nature of the issues doesn't come into play, in the sense that you're not trying to swing things in general in one direction. What does come into play is the procedural side of politics, almost, where you might see, the far left and far right combining to defeat a more moderate type of agenda. On the other hand, though, the moderates aren't working together either. And there's nothing in this political infighting that has anything to do with what's being reflected in terms of what the game's really about. The game's about this control of the issues. Now, you might want to help somebody move things in your direction. There is that possibility. So, for example, moving things from blue or green into orange, that overall helps red in the sense of now these things are closer to get. But digging issues out of someone's home area is not particularly easy. So you don't usually see it on the issues. You see it more on the constituencies, trying to shift them, or civil servants or interest groups. It throws a couple of crises into play. One in finance and banking. They steal a green British Columbia constituency with that. That turned to orange, but red got the issue. They also pulled orange's media issue, which was off on its own. That was a hard call. They could have gone for this at 2-1, but they'd rather make 2 3-1 attacks. As it turned out, they failed anyway. It's kind of a weird situation there too, because you're trying to I don't know. The one reason you want these issues, other than they're what you need to win the game, is if you can get them high enough, above 10, you have an advantage in elections. And then, well, it might be worth doing things like calling the Quebec election with all the advantages that being on the end, having a lot of issues has. It might be worth trying to move some of those blue constituencies out of Quebec. But that's a risky move. One of the big advantages Red has, they're very powerful at the beginning of the game. A lot of constituencies, and they own the government. And of course makes them into something of a bunny. So if some other players if the other players as a whole can coalesce and say, that's really a problem. It's hard to say that, though, when Orange has as many constituents, and, well, the issue situation is kind of scary. We see they have 8 issues. One of them, though, is education there, which they do not need. And actually, they have quite a few they don't need, and that's almost always the case. But that means that they're not too far. A good draw, and they could end up very close to being able, to declare victory. It's kind of how it ends up happening, is someone ends up kind of sleazing it out before everybody can realize, hey, they've got it there. Through, I forgot these guys, a quick crisis on tax, but we're unable to get this. Bad die roll. They had maximal odds, but they did get their media back. Not that they terribly wanted the media; they wanted the tax issue. Everything I'm doing with green, but this is a nice card, and I have to do things kind of disjointed the way I'm playing. Government violates provincial rights. All red interest groups become orange. All orange interest groups become green. I want to play this for 2 reasons. One, it only moves things towards me. And 2, I want it back in this deck to get reshuffled, because that can't cause me any trouble. And that's just going to convert a bunch of stuff. Now that means I have a lot of movement to do on my turn. Cool, these happen in place. Unlike, say, a premier coming into your hands or the government being formed. These kind of show up where they were. They can shift one space or whatever to get out of illegal stacking situations. But now you've got this weird kind of movement, and here you got orange with a couple of these that are in threatened positions where they might actually be convinced over by red. I gotta look at my issues, though, and see if I want to play with any of those. Well, green has things like the industry crisis that they might be interested in doing. They're not seeing they weren't seeing any easy way to capture anything out of the crisis zone, so they're holding those. I'm holding on to this because I think I may want to play this. You can see I gathered these here. They weren't able... I could have run one into semi-safety, but instead I'm gathering 2 together. That makes for a harder attack for orange, but orange may well go for that. Getting control of pieces is very valuable. Those are good attack pieces. They help you gain control of issues. I'm also launching an attack here on this Alberta with the premier. Now the premier will get... they can't remain stacked, and the premier can't be converted by this, but it gives me... only a 2-1. That's not great. There's some chance of a risk there, but it was the best attack I could make. Nothing happens at all. I was trying to grab a constituent. What about British Columbia? How many BCBs are there? There's a reasonable amount, 4 of them. I think I'm going to throw that election as well, and we'll see how that goes. Just really having a hard time with green, just because he's so weak right now. Once you get to that kind of weak spot, it's very difficult to gain more power. The only real hope is to get to be part of a coalition government, I think, for him at this point. Or cards like the one he did, which gives him some more fighting power so he can start converting constituencies, because constituencies is what he really needs. Well, there was a reason I wasn't playing the British Columbia. I thought I only had one election. I thought I only had one constituent for it. Turns out I had two, including the premier, and I lost them both along with an issue in each case. Horrible, horrible play for green. Ended up giving an issue here to blue and an issue in the premier over to orange. It was inexcusable. That kind of thing would never happen if I was paying full attention. But, it's okay. Well, with no crises or events that'll help them, and an unwillingness of orange, with whom blue could control and start calling red issues into play, into the crisis zone, blue's making an attack on this this is kind of risky on this Ontario constituency. I've got 3, 6-2, 3-1 attack, but I'm doing it from the legislative, which means there's a +2 to the attack. So on a 5 or higher, I actually shift towards green as opposed to the other way. But the net is a 5. That actually helps me, so I'm going to be getting whatever this issue is, which I don't know because it's hidden. Unfortunately, it's another tax, which I don't need. But I get a constituency out of it. Not looking too good in terms of what these elections can do for me. I'm not going to move things 2 spaces. So, do I really want to call the Manitoba-Saskatchewan elections? Well, maybe. Maybe just to pull things out of the red side of the game. It doesn't really help me for those cards to be in play anyway. Quebec I definitely do not want to play. I control Quebec. And Ontario is a little bit iffier because I just grabbed another Ontario, and I have a fair proportion of Ontario constituents. I'm going to let somebody else shake that tree for a little bit, especially since I just gained one that's completely undefended. Actually painful. Green is down to 1 constituency, this guy down here. Before I do those elections, I just noted that, and wow. That's not enough that they can combine with anyone, even the lead, to be able to, cause things to be shaken up. And here's the problem. In terms of, if you look at what orange and red are very close, both constituencies and issues, it's tough to cut a deal with either player when they're both so powerful. So even blue, who's in kind of that middle zone, right around 10 constituents, 6 issues, right around where you should be if everything were apportioned evenly. They could cut a deal with either one, but they've got to be very careful that those deals don't end up handing the victory to the other side. After playing those 2 elections, green came out ahead, getting the Manitoba premier and a Saskatchewan constituent, as well as an issue that they don't terribly want. But that'll draw some attention away from these special interests, probably, because orange does want that issue. It's a tariff, and I think. And they also like constituencies probably more than special interests. Even though special interests have a higher strength in movement, the constituencies are more important to the game, and they're also easier. And there's no saying I can't take both. But you see this kind of shifting. Saskatchewan went, the green got the 1 unit, but red kept the premier. That was kind of random. There's only two constituents there. So green's kind of recovered a little bit of their power. They're still very weak, though. Still not able to combine with any one player to swing things. Either any other set of 2 can control the government if they so desire, which you might well see that blue-red alliance happening simply because green is or orange is very is a little stronger than blue. The problem? Well, Orange has 2 civil servants. Red's probably not willing to offer more than 2 civil servants up. Just as a matter of course. Offering more than they currently are at doesn't seem worth it. And I think Red's the one sitting on the national election, aren't they? Or is it Orange? Orange is the one sitting on the national election. Orange has that, so nobody's, Orange isn't going to play that. The only way that they'd play that is if they can come to an agreement with Blue to say, look, let's you and I take the government, which Blue probably would be willing to do, probably for 2 or 3 civil servants, which overall is better for Orange. So I got to keep that in mind. It's been a couple of days, actually, since the last time I played, even just a round around. See if we can change that today, but I don't know. I can't break the spell I'm under. Red has a couple interesting things to attack right away, and a crisis that they do want to play. However, I have to look to add up to see if I can get these, because what I really need is constituencies and the issues. But once you have, if you don't have the power in the constituencies and it looks like you're close to winning with the issues, the other players are bound to gang up. So in a sense, actually making the crisis is an attempt to get more constituents. I don't know how else to do it, though. Where could I launch attacks? I could launch an attack here and try to grab a constituent. Conceivably, I could attack here, but that's very far away ideologically, so I'm not going to gain anything off of that. But getting these additional, very valuable combat pieces, or contesting pieces, seems like a more important step than playing the crisis. And one thing you'll start to look and see as the game goes on, people end up with piles and piles of cards they just don't play. That's the way I play it, at least. If there's a lot of deal making going on, people might play cards for other people. But for example, here's one. The combat strength of all blue pieces is doubled for the current player turn. Well, that is useless to Red. The only way he can use it is if he has some deal with Blue. It's very, very specific to one player. And that kind of, you would think, forces dealing. But, well, in my solitaire games, that kind of card doesn't. And to tell you the truth, when I sit, again, in an opposed game, I'm very unlikely to want to play a card for someone else. That's always a very hard deal for me to make for whatever reason. I don't know why. But I see people who like to deal that way. I just don't. I think it shows in my solo. Anyway, I'll set these attacks up and start going. Well, I chose to play the crisis anyhow, mainly because it was really, really tough to get these attacks into play. I made them both. This one only at 2-1. This one risking some issues, just because a lot of my power is in the civil servants and the premier, or the prime minister, and the premiers. I'm sorry, the premiers and the prime minister. The civil servants can attack, but they're so slow that they have a very difficult time putting pressure on anything. Which is why I really need these things. Unfortunately, I only got one back. It's very easy for me to attack into the crisis zone, but very hard to take advantage of situations, and especially to plunge deep into territory to make an attack. Maybe to support an attack that a constituent that's lost in somebody else's area is making, or to help fish them out. Anyway, Orange is getting away with one of them. Trying to get control of, say, these 2 special interest groups Green has piled up here is going to be really rough. I don't think I can do it. I look at this piece here. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I can get my wood in against them. But they're 4 strength points. I need to get probably, well, if I could get 4, I'm risking some things, But if I kind of want to get 8 in there to reduce the risk to only a 1 bad die roll. Although 1 to 1 is still in my favor because I have no penalties on the die roll, which is kind of a weird thing in this game. So I can get 2 points in there, but other than that, I'm having a really hard time finding any strength that I can bring to bear because, again, my strength's in my constituencies. At least my mobile strength. I have a couple of these civil servants, and they can't do it. I've got the premiers, and they can't fight on this one. They can fight over here because there's an issue involved. We already talked to Blue about, hey, you want to cut a deal? Basically, it's happening every turn because we're at 9 issues with Red. That's 1 away from winning. Of course, we know they don't have 9 real issues that they want. But I just can't bring more power into play. I've got 2 more here that I could bring in, so I could get the 1 to 1. But that seems to be it, and I have to decide if I want to go for a 1 to 1 to try to get 2 of these. The losses would be extreme if I fail. On the other hand, it is kind of nice to grab those special interests. I don't know. And then over, other than that, I can go for this, which I should know what it is. It's a tariff. You wouldn't normally look. That's only got 1. I've got crises in language and territory. I'm not really interested in playing either of them. So I may just hold off to not make my issue count get too high. If I can get it to 6, that's good enough. 11 is the next cutoff point. So yeah, I mean, the problem is a mobility issue. I can't move pieces into place to attack this. For example, this guy here, the Petra 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he just can't reach. So I guess I'll continue along that attack. I found myself unable to not make an attack where I have an advantage, even if the risk is high. But I won out this time. And also won over there. Getting pieces out of Green's territory. This guy's in a lot of trouble, but he's got that big defender on him, the British Columbian Premier, which prevents him from being as easily attacked. Since I couldn't make a deal, I don't feel like I can make the deal for the national elections necessarily, but let's see if we can push that. That is a different deal. Basically, if I cut with Blue, hey, you get 2. Yeah, Blue's not going to go with 2. Is Orange going to go with, say, splitting the civil servants more fairly? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 civil servants. So 3. Yeah, Blue will go with a 3 split. So we're going to call the national elections. And at this point, Red has the right to try to deal with other people. Red could try to shaft Blue, the Orange-Blue deal. They'd have to give more to do it. They can't take over. They can't take over the government with Green alone. So let me think for a little bit and do some off-camera dip. Okay, well, Red's attempt to outbid Orange was stopped in its track. Red basically said, oh, I'll offer you 4 of these civil servants. They could have gone to all 6. But blue is just like, no, I made a deal. So here's what we have as our civil servant, and it doesn't really matter which one's which, except maybe some events affect specific ones. But I tried to do it based on, well, he already had labor and commerce. What of the remaining was most interesting to someone who's kind of in this more tightly joined union, and justice seems like an important factor there in a way that, well, health and welfare is scary to start decentralizing, but control over the things that I view this as more the business party, for whatever reason, than anything else. And the real call there was getting control over finance or justice, maybe even giving up labor just for ideological grounds. But I kept labor because they already had it. All right. None of that matters to the game. The problem with the game is you remove these from the board and assign them, and then there's no explanation of what you do later. And that's one of the reasons I took the break. But I'm going to do what I always do. You can set them up anywhere in your home area that's legally stacked. Green has serious problems inside their own area that they want to resolve, in terms of issues that are running away, that if they don't take care of at this point, running away from with other people's control. They played this media blitz, doubling all the interest groups, because they have a decent number of them. And also, that gives them a 3-to-1 on this stack. And on this stack, they can't take this on because it's got an interest group, but they weren't going to be able to attack all three anyway. That went about as badly as it can a pair of sixes. No effect whatsoever, which means that their opposition is going to be able to get out with their loot as easily as they can. And once somebody starts getting this weak, it's hard for them to do anything and protect their issues. We're even seeing red here with the actions they took having problems. But here's the thing. If you walk into here and attack an issue and strip it off them, they can come back and attack it and take it back from you. It's a little harder if a concentrated movement was made against green. The only thing defending them, these are all in the grassroots, you have to, at the very weak, at the very strongest for the attacker, you'd be coming out of the legislative section, which means you'd still be getting a -2 on your combat roll. Let's say you get 3-to-1, that still means 1/3 of the time you're going to lose all your pieces. It's getting a little scarier. They launched a crisis in education, grabbed a piece off red from over here that was alone, but they're also making an attack here now. Remember, these are the dangerous ones. I was able to get 3-to-1 on it. I want to roll it up here, but it's at minus or +3 for grassroots, which actually means I have a 50-50 chance of losing this fight. Do I need this much strength? 3, 5, 6, 7. I don't know why I'm making this. 3 is sufficient. Let's just attack with the constituent that we need. And I managed to take it. So taking another issue from green. This one a media issue that I needed. Basically, if we're unwilling to take the deal, we had very little we could do. But by stripping more and more from green, we're going to weaken them as we see it. We'll see. But these are such a risk to go after. This one would be less of a risk from here, obviously. I could do that alone. And blue ends things with an election in Alberta. Orange held all the constituents for Alberta. Now they've lost them all. 1 to red, 2 an issue, and the premier to green. And I think that's it for this little cycle of video. Since we haven't seen the deal-making stage go, I'm going to continue playing. If you never enter that, it is possible for the game to end. Once you enter the deal-making, once people start actually saying, hey, red's got 8 issues, how do we do it? It's very, very tough because you'll start seeing this balance of power shifting. Orange and blue might agree to take red down. Well, they do. Okay, well now blue's up there. Then orange and red can cut a quick deal. It's really, really tough, and the only way to like get out of it is to make some sort of meta deal of, all right, look, you know, we'll make an alliance and it's for the game, and one of us, you know, we're not, a deal of a sort that kind of prevents the game from being unending, because there really is very little other option. And you start doing that, if that becomes obvious, then hell, somebody's going to step in and throw a national emergency. Now, I've never seen it get to that stage in a game that I've played. Usually what I've seen is very, very little deal making, even in opposed games. And somebody starts getting close. And, well, the one that really sticks in my mind, somebody starts getting closer. Somebody starts feeling marginalized the way green is here. And maybe they see that the game's never going to end, and they throw a national emergency. Maybe we'll do that mechanism just to show what happens there. The problem is, though, what's the advantage of anybody supporting the national emergency, to tell you the truth? So it's very likely that you'll be rolling on the national emergency chart at, you know, 1 player in favor, 3 against. You only have a 1 in 6 chance of not losing right off the bat. And then playing out the fight comes down to, assuming it's evenly matched, everybody, the reason people don't want to choose to start the national emergency is they could still lose the game from it. They can't lose the game if they oppose it and it fails. There is no winner once the national emergency starts. So, however you want to grasp that, it just should not be a very viable option. The only way there's a winner is if everybody agrees to support the national emergency. Good luck with that. Why would that ever happen? All right, I'm sending this one out.